Hey friends, welcome to Alive and Kicking with Jordan and Sarah. Today we're going to be talking about the magical blue beings, and Sarah has a very fascinating story to share with us. And quick backstory, I threw this out on X the other day, just asking people if they'd ever had like an experience with these blue beings, because we've had a few now. And we got like hundreds of comments and, kind of went a little crazy and viral, and people were talking about all their experiences with the blue beings. And, we don't share all of our spiritual encounters, and most people don't share any. But for some reason, when people have an experience with these blue beings, they feel compelled to tell people. It's part of the experience. So I thought it was fitting. Me and Sarah have been wanting to do this chat kind of a show for a long time. And I thought it was fitting that the first one that we're doing is about the experience with the blue beings, because something about this experience makes you want to share it with the world. So we're going to get into her fascinating story. I have a little story about blue beings that happened to me in the hospital. Maybe we can come back around to that later. But Sarah's experience is just so interesting. So let's dive right into that. So Sarah, say hi to the world and kind of share your, where this all started with you and these blue beings of light.
Hi, world. So the blue beings. So I have a pretty open, I meditate a lot. I speak with my spirit guides pretty regularly and have like an open relationship with them. But in May of this year, on Mother's Day weekend, the Saturday morning after we had the Friday night with the Aurora Borealis, I did a Monroe Institute meditation. It's the three messages meditation. And the second message that came through was it was just a clean white room, and there was a bench there, kind of like the Forrest Gump bench. And I kind of looked around and I walked over to it and I sat down and I looked to the left of me, and there was like, I don't know, it was like this automatic like pan up from the floor up. So like I saw like these beautiful red and gold slippers with these very ornate pants that like matched and like went up, and then like there was like a bare chest and it was blue. And I was like, whoa, okay. And as it continued to go up to the face, it was one of the Indian deities, Hindu gods. I am not well versed or educated in this, so I don't like mean to offend at all. But it was an elephant face that switched into like a really beautiful face and back. And they walked over to me, and they like the energy was just this overwhelming just love and kindness, and it like brought tears to my eyes. Even in the meditation, like I woke up like with tears streaming down my face. And they gave me a hug and brought me in. And when they pulled me to them, like they were so big that like my face was like at their waist. And I remember like the feeling of the texture of their skin. And I even remember thinking to myself, like, is this like body paint or something? And I'm going to pull back and my face is going to be painted blue, kind of a thing. And so we went and we sat down. That's just, like your analytical mind, right? But so we went and we sat down on the bench together, and like they dried my tears and just took my hand into their hands in this like very gentle fashion, where like my hand was like a finger in the palm of their hands, and they just like cupped my hand, and they just looked at me and said, "We're going to work with you now." And I was like, oh, okay. And then it went on to the next message in that three-part message. And then, let's see, I didn't really know what to make of that. So I just started Googling, like blue deities and such, and found two that I thought were the two that came in the meditation to me.
I
Um,
remember when you were telling me about that experience, we both were like, okay, this reminds us of like the Hindu gods, but we don't know anything about that world,
right.
so but it was obvious that's what it was. But obviously this wasn't like your subconscious doing this because we're not Hindu and this is not anything we know anything about or study or look into. And the night before you had mentioned that, the Aurora Borealis. And so we're in Florida, but we had the Northern Lights here and we walked around all night. Like we immediately ran outside and we spent like a couple hours, me and her walking down to the beach and just soaking in the energy of the Northern Lights. It was a very intense solar storm that was hitting us. And we spent a lot of the night just outside, just soaking up that energy. So I think it's very significant that the next day is when you had this visitation, because that was a pretty wild night, magical night for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then about a month later, maybe 5 weeks, I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. I did the same meditation again, the three messages meditation. And again, as the second message, this was just before you were going to the Monroe Institute. So the second message had, like, I went into this, like, it was like a field, and it was like bright green grass, like the brightest green grass I'd ever seen. It almost looked like how South Park, like the blades of grass and stuff. And then like the sun in the sky was like this bright orange and yellow, and it had like the actual like rays coming off of it. And it was like being in a Beatles like video or something. It was very unrealistic. And again, I panned over to my left and
Almost
I
like a
saw,
psychedelic, like cartoonish feel.
yeah,
Or
exactly. Like kind of claymation-y, but like very like, yeah, cartoony. It was very not natural, but like beautiful, right?
hmm
And then I looked over to the left again, and there was this cow. Like, that's all. I mean, like, it felt like it was a sacred cow. It was like this beautiful, like, blonde cow. It had like really ornate detailing on like its eyebrows and the edges of its ears and the lining of its mouth and all that kind of stuff. And I remember distinctly that it had like this little red like halo of flowers on top of its head, and it had these two gold tassels that came down below its neck. And I was like, man, that must be like a special cow if it's got like, a headdress on. And then I looked over to the right at the sun. And as I looked up at the sun, like this little, I don't even know how to describe it, like this little dot like formed in the sky. And then all of a sudden it just like super morphed into like this little ball of like vines and leaves and stuff. And as that happened, it just instantly started turning into a staircase. And it was like building this staircase coming down towards me from the sky. And as I was watching it form, this blue being is up at the top, and I believe that it was Kali, the war god. Like, she was very scary looking and intimidating, had like the head in her hand and a knife in another hand, and was like stomping down these stairs. And like, I was like, oh shit, like what's coming? And she like got right in my face, and she just yelled in my face, ah! And she stuck her tongue out at me, and then she threw her head back and laughed, and she like started walking off to the side, and she like looked back over her shoulder at me, and she said, keep following that red line. And I didn't know what any of it meant. But that was right before you went to the Monroe Institute. And then
So real quick, do you mind if I share the
yeah,
significance of the cow? So to put
yeah.
it in perspective, so I'm at the Monroe Institute. We're at the top of a mountain in Virginia where they're doing all sorts of astral work. And we go to the gift shop before I hop on the plane to come home, and I buy a bunch of shirts and stuff. And one of the shirts I get is, and I send her a picture of it, and she's like, "What the?" And it's a picture of a cow with headphones on, because the Monroe Institute, everything's about sound, and the headphones have the like the cord coming down, and with the headphones and the cord and the cow's face, it matched almost identically from the cow, visualization or whatever that you had, and it was almost like an exact match. But this
Yeah,
was
the
what,
headphones were red with gold
yeah,
strings coming down.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
so when you saw the cow, you're kind of picturing, okay, it must be like a headdress, because obviously, why would a cow have headphones on? That doesn't make any sense. And so I buy this shirt for her, and the shirt has a cow with these headphones, and then the string that's coming down is all the same colors and same everything as the visual that you had, a week or two before, a couple weeks
yeah,
before, and that was significant because, like I told you a story about how I almost didn't get the shirts, and I had to kind of hold up everybody to run in and get it, and it felt like I was like, I had to get this shirt. And I didn't even know the shirt was there. I just had to go in the gift shop and buy a shirt. I bought the shirt, and it was the same cow that you had seen before. So that was significant and kind of just a funny synchronicity. But because also, why would there be a cow on a Monroe Institute shirt anyways? That doesn't have anything to do with it. It was just very random. But it's, you find out later from your higher self that this was all planned and ordained, because what they were trying to do is prove to you, they wanted to give you a material proof, evidence that what you saw in your vision and that these visions you're having are real. That even though the vision is in this ethereal, energetic state, it's not physical matter, because these beings don't exist in physical matter reality. They're spiritual. This shirt manifested in the physical that matched it. And it seems to me, and even your higher self, you did a kind of a past life regression where you communicate with
yeah,
your higher self and all that. You tell the story later, but part of that was you asking your higher self about the significance of the shirt, and they said yes, this was done so that we could verify what you saw in your vision, and
yeah,
you had material proof. So I thought that was
yeah.
really neat.
Yep, absolutely. So the significance also being that I had shared that story with multiple people before you ever purchased the shirt. So I had told the story specifically pointing out the cow because I didn't understand why that was so significant, but it really stood out, right? So I like shared that story with a few of my close friends. So then whenever you sent me the picture of the shirt and I turned around and sent it to all of them, they all were like, yeah, dude, that's exactly what you explained to us from your vision. So I had multiple people that I had told about it before you ever got the shirt. So it was like a verification, like that I couldn't explain away and that I had told other people. So then they're even validating it as well, right? So while
Absolutely.
you were at the Monroe Institute, I went to have coffee one morning with my medium friend. And while I was talking to her, having not told her anything about the blue beings yet, she told me that there was a blue being hovering above me that was waiting to communicate with me.
Hmm.
Um, so just another layer, right?
And this leads us into your next encounter where they literally tell you that they're here to work with you.
Yes. Um, Well, that's what they told me in the first encounter was that they were here to
Okay.
work with me. But then they had only shown themselves as the deities, which had significance because me not knowing anything about that, like, not having any information, any background on that at all, like it really stuck out to me. And then I was forced to ask other people about it. So again, those outside people hearing that story and me not being able to just explain it away, right?
Absolutely. And something that just hit me, the cow, and I'm not well versed in Hinduism, even though I think it's a fascinating ancient religion and culture. The cow is sacred to them, I believe. I believe that's where the sacred cow comes from. So I think it's interesting that these beings were, they had that Hindu feel. Obviously, when you started researching what you saw, all these, Hindu deities and gods came up. And I just had another thought. I was carnivore and I used to eat beef all day, every day. I don't think I've had beef since then. Because as soon as I came back from the Monroe Institute, I completely changed my diet. Not willingly or voluntarily, but I did. Right? If you think about it, when was the last time
Yeah.
I even, and I was eating beef every single day. So I don't know if there's anything there, but like the cow, I think had more more meaning than just simply a way to, kind of have a physical manifestation of this vision to prove that your visions are real. This isn't just your imagination. But I think there is also some more significance to the sacred cow. So we'll
Yeah.
pull on that thread some more later. But anyways, let's go on to your third. So you had your first encounter after the Northern Lights, and then you had your second, right? And then after that, your medium friend saw the blue
Yeah.
beings behind you, and they kind of alerted and communicated to her that they have a message for you, and
Mhm.
that leads us into your next encounter.
So then I started the 60-day program that is a self-hypnosis, self-healing hypnosis program. And I was doing a hypnosis session that was communicating with your body, essentially, like hearing the messages from your body that your body has to tell you. And when I went into that meditation, like you start in a garden. So I've done this meditation before, and when I do meditations that start in a garden, it's always the same garden or typically the same garden. So when I went into this meditation, it was a completely different garden that I did not recognize at all. And I was like kind of taken aback by even where I was. It was beautiful and like, no complaints or anything, but it was just totally different than what I'd ever experienced before. And as I like looked around, I saw a little path, and as I walked towards that path, these two blue beings appeared at the other end of the path, and as soon as I saw them, they were like tall, slender, these form-fitting like bodysuits on. They extended their arms out to me. They stood like together, like in an angle, and then they extended their arms out. They each had three fingers on each hand, and they had these capes that kind of like came way up around the back of their head, kind of. I couldn't tell if they had hair that was like slicked back or if they didn't have hair. They had very small, like mouth and nose, but large eyes, but not like blacked out, but like, like our eyes, but just like very large. Um, and like the same emotion of just overwhelming like love and kindness and acceptance, just like to where I started crying again as I did in the first encounter with them. And
You had mentioned to
they,
me that even though they looked different, they were still blue in color. They had the same energy. So you knew, even though they looked slightly different, that they were the same beings as before.
right, as the first, and the significance, like I felt that there being two, and in that first meditation they were flip-flopping the two faces back and forth, so it felt like it was the same two, right? um and they gave me a hug again, and it was the tears and the overwhelming feeling of like happiness and like love and all that kind of stuff, and then they kind of like pulled me back and they were like, hey, we need to talk to you about your vessel. And they were like, you need to clean up your diet a little bit. Not that I eat unhealthy at all, but I had back in May found out that I have like some insulin resistance. So I had switched to a keto diet, which is higher in fat content. So all healthy fats, but higher in fat. And when they came to me, they said specifically that I needed to focus on shrimp and fish and a little bit of chicken and pork and no red meat for at least 30 days and increase my vegetable intake a lot. Um, so it was really interesting. Um,
It's pretty specific. I mean, for them to come and literally tell you what not to eat and what to eat. And we'll find out pretty soon, everybody, why this was such an urgent call to action for her and why they were so specific.
yeah, so then, like maybe a couple days later, I was not feeling well. I had switched to eating shrimp and fish like they had recommended, but again, still with the keto mindset. So I was like cooking it in butter and that kind of stuff. Um, so I got sick. I essentially had a gallbladder attack, and that is what they were warning me of, was to reduce my fat intake and to go to lean meats as opposed to like red meat and that kind of stuff that tends to be higher in saturated fats and fats, healthy fats again, but just not the right diet for me. So,
Yeah, when your gallbladder is in danger like that, any amount of fats is actually critical for it. Like the best thing you can do is remove all fats from your diet. And you were on a very, very high fat diet, lots of
yeah,
avocado, olives, butter, you know, beef, that kind of stuff. So while you thought you were doing the right thing at that point in time, it was probably the worst thing you could possibly do. And they come in
yeah.
here and they say, hey, you need to heal your vessel. And to do that, you need to switch to these lean meats, very specific lean meats and more vegetables. And didn't they also tell you about some specific herbs? Didn't they walk you around the garden? You told me that they were pointing out specific herbs that we later found
So,
out were like specifically for liver and gallbladder health.
so that was on my fourth meditation, and it was again,
Sorry, I'm
the,
jumping ahead.
that's okay. Um, so had the gallbladder attack. It lasted 2 days. Essentially, it was like a overnight kind of a thing. And then like I was like, okay, like that wasn't awesome. So let's see, what else I can do to help to heal my vessels. So again, did the what is your body trying to tell you meditation or hypnotherapy session. And in this one, I went back to that same garden, and at the end of the path was just one of the blue beings, and they don't speak to me. It's like telepathic speaking. Um, but they walked me through the garden, and they pointed out 5 different herbs, like gave me a list of 5 different herbs, and the actual like for instance, one was turmeric. So they walk over to this turmeric plant, and like between their hands they like make it like hover. It's almost just like a holographic image of, but it's the entire plant from the flowering part all the way down to the root, and they make it like glisten and glow as they're like transferring the knowledge to me of like, hey, you need to take in, this is what the flower looks like, but this is the important part, is the juice from the root. So it was turmeric, it was ginger, it was milk thistle, it was golden seal, and I can't remember the other one. But what was the most shocking part about that was 3 of the herbs I literally, well, I guess milk thistle I had heard of before, but like golden seal, I had never even heard of that before. So I got
I
up from
haven't
that
either.
meditation and wrote down those 5 herbs. And then I have a good friend that just kind of like a herbologist, I would say, but I instantly asked her, hey, what are these 5 herbs? And she said all of them were for gallbladder and liver health. So even having that, like, that communication that's not information that I know anything about, and having that come from the blue beings, like, so it really felt like everything that they were here to do was to help heal me during, like, warn me and then heal me from that gallbladder attack. And
And
also
here's
we found
something else.
out that,
No, go ahead. Finish.
like, I did the past life regression, I did the higher self access, and my higher self did verify that that is what they were here to do. They were here to help me heal. They were part of, you know, it's all love and light, like all good. That's what they are here to do, is to help people to heal. And that, the cow shirt was a physical manifestation, like, so that I would stop questioning myself and stop questioning the information that comes through. you know,
Didn't your
Here's a
higher self
physical,
also specify who the blue beings were, where
they
they're
specify
from?
the Pleiadians.
Pleiadians?
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
And I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is that, so you were dealing with this gallbladder attack. Your back was hurting, your side was hurting, your shoulder was hurting, but we didn't know exactly where it was rooting from. And you did what most people wouldn't do in this situation. You quieted your mind and you dropped into a meditative state where you went and asked your higher self for help. And then you went and asked the universe for help. And the help was delivered to you in a very precise, very specific, undeniable way. I mean, if you have these loving blue beings appear out of nowhere and walk you through this enchanted garden and specifically tell you, eat this, take this herb, da, da, da. I mean, that's as specific as you can get. That's like going to a doctor. It's like going to the best doctor in the universe. And,
Yeah.
but that wouldn't have happened had you not meditated, because that's how you communicate with these beings, because they're spiritual. They won't just come to your door and knock on your door. You can't go to their office. This is a spiritual thing. And it's as real as physical life. And it's even better because they're tapped into so much more knowledge. But I think that just the fact that you were able to quiet your mind and meditate on this and get these answers is so huge, because there's so many people out there dealing with illnesses and things like that, and they can't get answers from the doctor. They can't get answers from the pharmacy. And this is a way to, I mean, these beings are out there. They want to heal. I mean, everyone I talk to, when I put that tweet out, there's also a famous journalist named Ross Coulthart, and he's in Australia, and he said many people have been coming to him with these stories of blue beings, and that they're coming to him because they have this urge to tell him. He's like, I don't know why they're coming to me, but this is fascinating. And most of it has to do with healing. And when I was reading through the comments on my X feed about this, most of the people talked about them being not only compassionate and loving and all the things that you described, but also they came specifically to heal them. So there's these beings out there that want to help us. They want to heal us, but we have to establish that connection. And the best way to establish that connection is through meditation, because that's how we do get out of this physical world for just a minute and be able to make that connection to the spiritual world. And they're there ready to help, and they can help you. And I think that's so powerful. And it seems like they needed to get this message to you, because from what we found out after you passed a bunch of gallstones is that this was happening, and it was coming in fast and hard, and we had to make some quick changes. This was not something we could have kicked the can down the road. And this
Really
message
started back in like the pain from it really started to escalate back in May, whenever I had that first meditation with them. And I think that was also significant, that like they started communicating, and I had that like pain in my shoulder and in my back, and then we found out that was all related to it.
Yeah. And it was, the pain was building and building, and then the visitations started building and building. They became more frequent, and it was obvious that they were here to help you, but you had to establish that connection. And so I just think
it wasn't just one. Like I meditated twice and received those messages, but then also in hypnosis. So and then through hypnosis, accessing the higher self. So like they were determined to get that message through no matter what. And then also like the family, like the tie to like my, family hereditary, so I'm Scandinavian, and Scandinavian women are more predisposed to gallbladder issues, just funny things like that. But like the past life that kept recurring was my Scandinavian life, right? So again, and when I did the higher self access, they did verify that the blue beings from the meditations from the two first meditations were the same blue beings as more alien Pleadian beings, but that they didn't want to like traumatize me or cause fear, so they came in a more recognizable but very would stand out to me, so that I wouldn't just forget about it. I took note of that, and it stuck with me. Those were very significant things to see in my meditations.
Yeah, it's like they have a mask that they can put on depending on the person they're working with. Because you got to think, if me and you were watching some videos yesterday, other people, we've just been researching blue beings, trying to figure out what's going on here. And there's so many people sharing their stories, and there are so many parallels between them. But some of the people describing the blue beings coming and healing them, they were a little more like this one lady we were watching yesterday, she was kind of a tougher lady, and she said that they just kind of grabbed her, kind of shook her. They said, "We're here to heal you," but they were a little more abrupt, with their method. But with you, you're very sensitive, and in this moment, you were in a lot of pain and you were scared. And so, what would be the point of them coming to heal you if they also caused some sort of mental scarring? So they were very careful with you to make sure that they healed you and didn't cause any adverse kind of butterfly effects. So I think that it shows their compassion, it shows their level of intelligence, that they can kind of form not only their visual appearance, but also their demeanor depending on the person they're working with to make sure they have the most positive impact.
Yeah.
It's
And
just
even
very
with
clear that they are here to help and that's it, nothing else.
yeah, absolutely. And even with that first encounter, how they told me, we're here to work with you, and made it this very loving and kind, and when you're with your grandparents or something, it was just this overwhelming, loving, complete acceptance. And so it really stood out. But then whenever I saw them as the Pleiadians, I remembered that exact same feeling.
So it's almost like they got more comfortable with you, you got more comfortable with them, they could take the mask off and just be who they are. So it seems like the Pleiadians that you saw is their natural form, right? Wouldn't you think?
That is what
That's
they
how
were.
they really, yeah.
And they
So,
said, again, tying back to when we went to the retreat in January, that is my star family, and that's why they were here to help me.
oh, really? So
Yeah.
what? I didn't know about the roots back then to the Jupiter trip, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this kind of
So
started, the
we're there.
contact started.
Well, so when we were there, we did a regression that was just contact, finding out who your star family was.
Okay.
And both Kathy and I saw Pleiadian. And
Uh,
there were quite a few other Pleiadians that were there that
yeah.
weekend that we instantly, felt connected to, her and I. Um,
So that
so
might have
that was,
been your first time establishing kind of
yeah,
contact with your Pleiadian family.
yeah.
Yeah.
It
A
was
lot of
like
magical
I,
things happened that weekend.
yeah, it was like
Shout
I
out to Sarah Bressman Cosme for putting that together,
and Susan Spooner.
and Susan Spooner, of course. So, yeah, that's wild. And then, I mean, we'll keep this episode kind of short and focused on the blue beings, but to prelude into upcoming talks, this led into your visitation by, I mean, what we come to find out is Mary Magdalene, right? And all sorts of other magical things that happen, my vision with Jesus. And the wild thing about all this is that neither one of us are religious. We weren't particularly raised religious. I mean, you were raised a little more religious than me, but I wouldn't say that you were
Yeah.
raised real strict religious or anything. We've abandoned all religion for decades now. We're more spiritual than anything, but we're more agnostic just in the way we look at everything as everything is an open possibility for us. We don't close the door on anything, but we also don't subscribe to anything. And a lot of stuff that's been happening lately, especially, has been, I mean, you have to call it religious just because Mary Magdalene visited you, Jesus visited me, Shiva and all the other, Hindu gods that visited you. I mean, it's like a full house of these religious characters. And it really
Yeah.
makes you think differently about everything because, I mean, these people, you got to think, where do these religions come from? Well, they came from people's experiences. So people had these experiences with these beings. They write it down, they tell their friends, all that kind of stuff, and it turns in over time into these religions.
Yeah.
But they're just reporting their experiences. And people like us that aren't religious at all are having these experiences, the same experiences I guarantee people had 5,000 years ago and 3,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago. These are ancient experiences that are still ongoing today. And it's really wild when you really dig into this, that these beings are out there. They want to help us. They're not religiously affiliated. It's just who they are. And, as humans, we've turned those stories into religions, but these are just, it's a cosmic zoo out there. And there's all sorts of beings at all sorts of different levels of consciousness and spirituality. And, I just think it's really neat because it's obvious that we're not subconsciously projecting these things out there because neither one of us are religious. So if I was to subconsciously project something, it wouldn't be Jesus. And for you, it wouldn't be Mary Magdalene. When these things happen to us, we immediately start Googling. We're like, what the heck does this
Right.
mean? Like, we don't know what any of these things are. This is not
Yeah.
our subconscious projections. These things are throwing us for a loop, and it's endlessly fascinating. And, you know, I don't know, it's what a neat experience. And for you, that this thing happened, it was such a timely thing. It was an urgent thing, and that they literally healed you. You, not to get too much information, but there was a point where I was about to take you to the hospital. This thing was getting dire, and it seemed like you were on the cusp of an all-out gallbladder eruption, which could be very bad. And these beings came, gave you the exact information you needed at the exact time. And now, I mean, you're right as rain if you ask me. I mean, you look like $1 million. And since then, you haven't been complaining about any pain or anything. I mean, that's a miraculous healing. It really is. There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few moments where I was about to ask you to take me someplace. It was not a pleasant experience, but it was really like crazy how the second day, like that morning, whenever I had the second attack, when it was over, it was like I felt like it was over. Like
Yeah.
it felt like, okay, now like the healing can begin because we got that out, but like I couldn't heal with that sitting inside of my body, right? So, and they say that your gallbladder is where fear stores, and I have had some fear that I've been dealing with. And it was really crazy because like after that, I really felt like a lot of that fear exited my body, like, and I haven't been dealing with nearly as much of that
Hmm.
as I was. It was almost like it was like coming to a head kind of a thing.
Well, those
But
gallstones that's physical matter. So it's almost as if your fear materialized into physical matter and your body expelled it, and now it's gone. It's
yeah,
somewhere else now. It's not in your
yeah,
body anymore. And you
yeah,
might have some residual. It might take you a while to like completely, you know,
yeah,
get the fear completely out of your system. But I mean, I think that the physicality of the stones represents that fear turning into material objects and leaving your body. And that, that's pretty significant because like you said, you felt as soon as that happened, like it was over. You weren't like,
yeah,
uh-oh, what's going to come next? You were like, that was it. Like to have that
yeah.
knowing of healing and peace, that's a big deal. It's very significant.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it felt significant. And I mean, I've been very focused on my health for the last year, year and a half, like very focused, doing a
Hmm.
whole lot of functional labs and that kind of stuff to be like the best health that I can be and that kind of stuff. So it just, I, I didn't know what I didn't know, right?
Yeah,
So getting that information, like being able to quiet my mind and meditate, like, and even using the hypnosis. I mean, I wouldn't have even gotten those messages if I didn't do that. So I can't even like scream from the rooftops loud enough, like how very important, that is. Like
yeah.
taking the time each day, even if it's 5 minutes, to quiet your mind and let your body or your higher self or whatever like communicate with you, you know?
Absolutely. And, shout out to Sarah Bressman Cosme, who had the self-hypnosis tapes that you're using for that part. Akashic Beck, who did your past life regression that led to your direct conversation with your higher self. And then, of course,
Yeah.
to the Monroe Institute for providing the HemiSync audio, and the guided meditations that started this whole thing. And,
Yeah.
you have to use all the tools in the toolbox, and those are some of the most powerful tools. And for people out there that maybe aren't good at meditating or don't know where to begin, I would begin with the Monroe Institute because especially on their Expand app, they have something for everybody, no matter what you're trying to do in life, heal or manifest or sleep or relax. It doesn't matter. They have, a track for you, and it's the easiest, quickest way to get into that deep meditative
Really
state where you
deep.
can make this connection with your higher
Yeah.
self, with these other beings out there. And, what you don't want to do is wait until, a tragedy strikes or emergency. Because like my experience with what we call blue light. So real quickly, I was in the hospital 5 years ago. I was in the ICU, and it was looking very, very bad. The doctors didn't know if I'd survive. No one knew if I'd survive. And we had this picture me and you took. It was like a selfie of ourselves. And this was at the peak of madness, of chaos in this ICU experience. And in the corner of the picture, there's this blue light, and there's no like light source over there. There's no like highlights on us or shadows or anything. The light doesn't really make any sense, and it's blue. So I think it's interesting because at that point in my experience, that's when my mindset changed. That's when I went from fear and thinking, oh shit, I might die here, to like having this calmness, this like almost like overconfidence of like, okay, time to get out of here, you know, and the doctors and nurses are like, no, dude, you're not going anywhere. What are you talking about? And I'm like, everything's cool, guys. I got to go home now. I got to start healing. And it was like you said, like when you passed all those stones and you just kind of had this feeling, okay, that was it. I had a feeling like, okay, that was the worst of it. Now it's time to get on to the healing and the recovery part. Whereas like my body, I still couldn't walk. Like I was in a very rough shape, but mentally and spiritually, I turned the corner. I hit that tipping point and I turned the page and I was like, okay, everything's going to be okay. And it was right around the exact same time that blue light came in. So it's not only the physical healing they do, it's also, you know, the mental understanding and knowing that everything's going to be okay. And I mean, that's it's
To
priceless.
me, it feels almost like they like heal your like spiritual body, and then it has to take time to come in. Because I mean, like, I didn't get there in a day with gallstones and all that stuff. You didn't get there in a day with your pancreatitis and stuff. So it can't actually be like 24-hour healing. But I
Hmm.
remember when you were in the hospital, and I remember the moment where I was able to breathe for a second and like felt like, okay, like we made it over the worst of it. He's going to be okay. Now it's time to go home and like start the really hard part, you know? But
Yep.
I definitely believe that that orb in the room with us was them. It was the same sort of bluish, purplish, sparkly kind of feeling.
And these are the
And
angels that people have been describing for thousands of years, you know, when a being of light comes and miraculously heals you. I mean, that's an angel. It doesn't, I don't care what religion you're part of or what you think. I mean, that is an angel. That's what these people have been describing. So these are visits by angels, whether these angels originate from the Pleiadian star system or whatnot. I mean, these are angels. That's the only way I can describe them. I mean, call them aliens, call them deities, call them gods, whatever. I think these are angels because they don't want anything from you. They don't want anything in return. They don't say sign this form. They don't say give me your soul. They don't say anything. They're like, hey, we're here to help. That's it. We just want to help you. And that's
yeah,
an awesome feeling because I felt them there in that room that day in the hospital. I know you felt them. And this has nothing to do with religion. This is just you feel a presence. You feel that you're not alone. You feel that there's somebody working on you. Like the way I described it, like you know, you have like an energetic body and then you have your physical body. And it's almost like the physical world is a shadow of this world. So light shines through and eventually it makes a shadow down here. So they fix this. They're up here
yeah,
working on this. And then that eventually manifests down here. So it doesn't happen instantly, but you can feel them working on your energetic body, your light body. You can feel them working on it. And then eventually it hits down here and then it manifests. But it's pretty neat. So it's like they're out there working on us. They're out there helping, you know, and we need to help them help us, right? We need to take better
li-
care of our vessel, take better care of other people,
right?
communicate
Like
more
take the time
freely,
to connect and listen.
and listen and connect because it's like they're trying to call us, but we're not answering the phone. So we have to be able to connect to get the message. And I think the most important part is sharing this stuff. Like you just shared with us a lot of personal details. You shared with us a lot of, you know, sensitive stuff that, you know, probably still you haven't fully processed and recovered from. So we appreciate you. And I think that the best message that we can send to everyone is A, there's people out there, beings out there that are helping us and want to help even more. And B, when these things happen, share it because the more people that find out about this stuff, then they will be more likely to share their story. And then other people, as long as it opens these doors to this possibility, because people don't even know. I didn't know that there's these spiritual, energetic light beings up there helping us and wanting to help more. I didn't know that. We can't see them, you know? So the more people that share these stories, it spreads that light and love, it spreads that hope, and hopefully it encourages people to connect, whether it's through prayer, meditation, whatever you need to do to quiet your mind and to tune out this physical world and to connect to the spiritual world is super important, especially if you need help, because there are people out there that can help you. You just have to answer the phone when they call. So anybody out there that has a similar experience, please share it with us, comment, and share this video out there to anybody you know, because the more people that hear this, like I said, it will encourage them to share their experiences, and only good things can come from that, I think. Anything you want
Absolutely.
to leave the world with, Miss Sarah?
Um, just like it's a really uncomfortable space to share some of these more private things, and that, you can be judged for, but we have to start sharing these things so that we can normalize it, right? So,
And
yeah,
it seems
I think
very normal. I was shocked by how many people. I just threw out a random tweet on X and said, "Hey, has anybody had an experience with blue beings?" Very vague, and basically thinking maybe a few people might chime in. And hundreds, probably thousands now. I mean, it was seen by a couple 100,000 people. Last time I checked, I had 200 comments. Um, so many people were like, "Yes, me," and sharing their stories. So this is common. It might not be talked about a lot, but it happens a lot. So now what we need to do is talk about it more because it's happening, and it's always been happening, and it always will be happening. It's not going away. It's a good thing. So yes, thank you for sharing your story, because I know this is not easy, and hopefully more people will share their stories, because oh my God, it's the most fascinating, interesting thing in the world. Are you kidding me? So let's talk about it more. I can't wait
absolutely.
to have more conversations with Sarah, because her life is just nothing but magic, and we have endless amounts of awesome things to discuss. So we'll be
More or
back.
less.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyways, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.